200 today and take a look at the future through a door to the past.
This is CNN.
I'll be back in 30 minutes. Inside Politics is next. But first, a business news update from Jan Hopkins in New York.
Thanks, Cheryl. Stocks on Wall Street took another nosedive today. The blue chips sinking to their lowest level in more than a month. Economic concerns and weakness in growth stocks pushed the market lower. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell another 26.70 to a level of 33.43 and a quarter. The Dow has lost 60 points in the past 2 sessions. Trading volume today was again heavy, 206 million shares traded. The other key indexes fell sharply as well, the Nasdaq adding another 4 points to yesterday's 8-point tumble. Bond prices continued following today ahead of tomorrow's reports on inflation and retail sales. Traders fear the inflation report will be worse than expected. The Treasury's 30-year bond is down 7/32 in price and the yield up to 7.89%. The future of United Press International is once again up in the air. Televangelist Pat Robertson said today he is withdrawing his $6 million bid for the news service. Instead, he's offering to purchase only a couple of the company's assets, including the name. Robertson said it would cost too much to rebuild the 84-year-old news service. That's the latest in business news. I'm Jan Hopkins at the CNN Business News Desk in New York. Inside Politics is next.
See Bill run, but how can he win? The Clinton campaign struggles to plot its course around an obstacle named Perot.
Facts don't matter. Stories matter.
The story is Ross Perot is railing against big federal spending despite the fact his computer firm made big bucks on government contracts. An in-depth report on Inside Politics 92.
This is Inside Politics 92 with Bernard Shaw in Washington and Catherine Crier at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
Thanks for joining us. It once seemed so clear for Bill Clinton. He'd run for the White House as a Southern moderate man of the issues, and he'd run to win outright. But Ross Perot's undeclared entry into the presidential fray has turned old thinking on its head, and now the Clinton camp is wrestling with different strategies for getting the governor in the White House. CNN's Jamie McIntyre is with Clinton at his home base in Arkansas.
The question facing Bill Clinton and his advisors is how should Clinton run in this unusual year when the presidential race may not go to the finisher with the most votes? Clinton held a skull session with Democratic Party Chairman Ron Brown yesterday to talk tactics, but for the moment is holding his cards close to the vest. Conventional political wisdom has been that only a moderate Democrat could win the White House, and only by appealing to a broader base of support than the traditional Democratic strongholds of organized labor, minorities, and gays. But independent Ross Perot's frontrunner status has changed the political equation and is causing some in the Clinton campaign to question the current calculations for a winning formula.
The sooner that a strategy is devised and implemented, the better it is for the candidate.
Clinton is pursuing a 51% strategy. That is, attempting to win enough votes from Democrats who voted for Bush last time, as well as undecided or independent voters, to give him a victory in the fall. But with Perot in the picture, some high-level campaign staffers and advisors, sources say, feel 40% would be enough to put Clinton on top in a three-way race, or at least throw the election into the democratically controlled House of Representatives. By setting his sights lower, Clinton could aim his message more directly at liberals and sharpen the contrast between his stands and Bush and Perot. And while it's generally conceded that was a prescription for disaster in the last election, in this three-candidate campaign of 1992, it's being offered by some in the Clinton campaign as a possible winning scenario. Jamie McIntyre, CNN, Little Rock.
Well, he blew his own horn on Arsenio. He's bought time for a Q&A session on NBC. And now Bill Clinton wants his MTV. The governor will appear on the cable music video channel Tuesday night. During the hour-long taped program, Clinton will answer the questions of more than 200 young people.
On Capitol Hill at this hour, the House of Representatives locked in a contentious debate over a proposal to amend the Constitution to make balanced budgets the law of the land. Tough lobbying for and against from President Bush and House Speaker Tom Foley. Foley now calling the vote too close to call. For the struggling Bush campaign, the balanced budget amendment appears to make good political sense. And this afternoon, Bush took his case straight to the voters in a satellite broadcast available to local television stations and other media outlets.
A balanced budget amendment is real action, and it will work. We should not be willing to risk our grandchildren's future on sound bites that merely sound real. The deficit is what's real. Congressional inaction is what's real.
Meanwhile, the president, who has stayed away from the many talk and interview programs that have hosted Ross Perot and Bill Clinton, will join CNN's Frank Sesno for a live interview next Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. With Bush fighting the budget battle, he has left his second-in-command, Dan Quayle, to fight on another front, family values. It began with Quayle's attack on Murphy Brown and her baby, and it continues tomorrow when the Vice President addresses the National Right to Life Convention. Our White House correspondent Mary Tillotson now on Quayle's campaign for morality and the man prompting it.
With all the polls showing Texas billionaire Ross Perot making big inroads into such traditionally conservative strongholds as Southern California and other western states, Dan Quayle is on a crusade to shore up the right flank of the grand old party.
Moral values are what the American people care most about. And that's why I say this about the scorn of the media elite. I wear their scorn as a badge of honor.
If Quayle's now famous Murphy Brown speech about family values was Act 1, his speech this week before a Baptist convention in Indianapolis was Act 2.
The cultural elites respect neither tradition nor standards. They believe that moral truths are relative and all lifestyles are equal. They seem to think the family is an arbitrary arrangement of people who decide to live under the same roof, that fathers are dispensable, and that parents need not be married or even of opposite sexes. They are wrong.
In a White House session with reporters, President Bush and octogenarian Senator Strom Thurmond both endorsed Quayle's point of view.
I support the Vice President, I'll tell you that.
He made a good speech, Jansen.
I haven't read the speech, but what I saw about it I liked.
For public consumption, members of the Bush camp insist Ross Perot is hurting Democrat Bill Clinton more than he's hurting the president. But political analyst David Gergen says Perot is clearly eating into Bush's conservative base in some crucial states.
Ross Perot is potentially lethal to the Bush campaign because right now he's winning Florida, he's winning Texas, he's winning California, winning California big. If he takes those states, that's the heart of the Republican constituency, the constituency George Bush needs to win in November.
Even Bush supporters concede if anybody can stop a potential hemorrhage of conservative support from the president, it's not Dan Quayle. They say George Bush and only George Bush could pull that off. Mary Tillotson, CNN, the White House.
Well, joining us now with some insights into the role that Dan Quayle is playing in the Bush re-election effort, our public opinion expert, Bill Schneider. Bill, looking at your polls, what do they say about Dan Quayle?
Well, the polls about Mr. Quayle are not good. Two-thirds of Americans continue to say they don't think he would be qualified to be president if something should happen to President Bush. In fact, a majority of Republicans feel that way as well. That's been true for some time, but something has changed. We have been asking people whether they approve or disapprove of the job that Quayle is doing as vice president. Now, back in December of last year, a majority of Americans said they approved the job he was doing as vice president. Now, in the June poll, this is the Time CNN poll, we find the majority now disapproves of the job that Dan Quayle is doing as vice president. We've seen other polls showing that Bush's job ratings, the president's job ratings, have been declining. He may be pulling Dan Quayle's job ratings down with him.
Well, there's also been some criticism and controversy certainly around Dan Quayle's comments about the Murphy Brown incident. Might that have affected the numbers at all?
Well, we actually measured how people felt about the vice president's criticisms of the Murphy Brown show, and we got an interesting answer. We asked people, do you think the criticisms were completely or somewhat justified, completely or somewhat unjustified? And as you can see, 45%, that's close to a majority, took the most negative answer. They felt that those criticisms were completely unjustified. So it didn't seem to go over well with the general public.
Can that suggest at all that the family values strategy isn't working?
Well, George Bush is ahead of Bill Clinton when people are asked, who do you think represents family values better in this country? That's a Bush issue. Now, Dan Quayle said yesterday, it's an us versus them issue. I'm on the us side, and that's the majority side. And the Vice President is quite right about that. But he also said moral values are what people care most about. And he may not be right about that, because during the course of this campaign, we found that what people care most about isn't the family values issue, it's the economy. And that's what's been hurting both Bush and Quayle. What the Vice President and the President may be trying to do is using the family values issue to rally the Republican Party base, because they know that they can win this election with less than 50% of the vote, and the family values issue is something that conservatives do care very much about.
Well, a question raised in 1988 that is still the most popular. What about Dan Quayle on the ticket? How do people feel about that?
Well, we did ask people if they think President Bush should keep Dan Quayle on the ticket or replace him with someone else. The answers they were not good. A majority, 55%, were of the opinion that Bush should replace Quayle. 32% thought he should keep Quayle. Indeed, when we asked that question of Republicans, a plurality of Republicans said, 49 to 43, as you can see here, that President Bush should replace Dan Quayle. I suppose the worst news in the CNN Time poll was when we asked people whether they favor or oppose Quayle as the 1996 Republican candidate for president. 3/4 of the public said that they would oppose Quayle as the nominee 4 years from now, and in fact, 2/3 of Republicans said that they would oppose him. So he doesn't appear to be going over particularly well, even among his fellow Republicans right now.
A glimpse into 1996. Thanks, Bill Schneider. Bernie?
Thank you, Catherine. Big government has been very, very good to Ross Perot. Next on Inside Politics 92, we'll have a special assignment report on how Medicare contracts help make the Texas tycoon a billionaire.
Before Buyer's Lab recommends a copier, they make copies. And after making over 1 million of them, Buyer's Lab has recommended every single Meta copier they've ever tested. And that's a record no other major brand of copiers can duplicate. Call 1-800-ABC-META.
What if we could make all the clean air and water we need?
What if there was enough food for everyone?
What if we understood the aging process?
What if we cared so much about education we made the most of every mind?
What if research in space made life better on Earth?
We're helping to build Space Station Freedom, the next step in space exploration, and a new way to look at the home planet.
Welcome to Hotel Views, the summer getaway. Holiday Inn or Ramada? Bob?
Thank you. Susan, you heat rash. At Holiday Inn, you get a place to eat, a place to sleep, and a place to swim. Come on, it's a perfect vacation.
Bob, you compost heap. Ramada's got great rooms, nice restaurants, and refreshing pools, just like Holiday, but at a better price. And now with Ramada's summer sale, you and the family can get away for as low as $39 a night. You could save it up to buy some breath mints. There's no debate. Ramada's in, Holiday's out.
On CNN Today, Jeannie Most takes you to a school that can make your pet a star on Early Prime. Then on Showbiz Today, the 70th birthday of a late legend. A look back at Judy Garland. All today on CNN.
The effort to get Ross Perot on the ballot in all 50 states goes on. Earlier today in Raleigh, North Carolina, the Perot campaign submitted petitions carrying some 175,000 signatures. Now, that's more than double the number required by law. These signatures must be certified by the State Board of Elections. In North Carolina, only candidates nominated by a party are allowed to have Electoral College electors placed on the November ballot. Perot, who is unaffiliated, would come up empty. However, there's a bipartisan effort in the North Carolina legislature to rewrite the rules and allow independent candidates to pick electors. The change is expected to win easy approval.
One of the cornerstones of Ross Perot's unconventional presidential campaign is his promise to end wasteful government spending and save the public plenty of money. Yet Perot's personal fortune was built on government contracts underwritten by taxpayers' dollars. John Camp, senior correspondent for CNN's Special Assignment Team, has details.
Medicare, this is Debbie. May I help you?
Medicare and Medicaid. For a quarter of a century, providing health care benefits to the elderly and poor in the United States.
If you give me your Medicare number, I'll send you a book that's got a list of participating providers.
From the outset, a paperwork nightmare, as newly eligible citizens rush to file their claims.
We save the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars a year in reducing claim payments to hospitals and doctors.
When Medicare began in 1965, Ross Perot's Electronic Data Systems, EDS, was hired in Texas to dig the government from beneath mountains of paperwork.
Then their concern was, even though you did that, maybe you're making too much money.
Ross Perot's company was making so much money from Medicare contracts that a congressional committee launched an investigation in 1971 into what a federal official described as exorbitant profits. A CNN inspection of those congressional records and other Perot corporate documents makes clear that government was the goose laying the golden eggs for Perot's company, EDS. In fact, Perot's ability to land lucrative Medicare and Medicaid contracts formed the foundation of his great wealth. Nobody perhaps knows more about those early contracts than James Naughton, chief counsel to the congressional committee that investigated Perot's company.
To Boston.
For the first time, he publicly discusses that investigation.
Medicare, Medicaid was very good to Mr. Perot.
Well, yes, indeed.
The congressional investigation centered on contracts given Perot's company by Texas Blue Cross Blue Shield, the big health insurer that ran Medicare in Texas. Naughton claims EDS made huge profits on those Texas contracts.
The testimony at our hearings and the other information that we obtained indicated that through 1968, there was as much as 200% profit in these contracts.
As we looked at the facts, I became more and more, frankly, outraged.
Former Alabama Republican Congressman John Buchanan sat on the committee.
I do know he overcharged. I am certain of that.
Number one, we weren't overcharging. But number zero, before number one, is we took a failing system and turned it into a successful system.
By the same token, Medicare took Perot's fledgling EDS and turned it into one of the nation's fastest growing corporations.
He built his business, he says, on the private sector, on free enterprise. He did so by, in my judgment, giving the bill to the taxpayers and laying the cost on old folks and their health care needs.
CNN's investigation of congressional and Perot corporate records discloses that between 1966 and 1971, the formative years of Perot's empire, an estimated 55% of EDS's total profits, $23 million, came from Medicare and Medicaid contracts.
After receiving the Medicare contracts, their overall profits had increased dramatically.
Those profits didn't go unnoticed on Wall Street. In 1969, as EDS added more Medicare contracts, its stock nearly quadrupled in value, making Ross Perot a billionaire. With the expansion of Perot's Medicare and Medicaid empire came the questions by federal investigators and later by members of Congress. The congressional committee looking into Perot's early Texas Medicare contracts was trying to find out if his company, EDS, was overcharging on its government contracts. But when federal auditors tried to inspect EDS's books, Perot said no. In other words, Ross Perot, who today promises to end waste in government, refused to let auditors see if his own company was overcharging the government.
They promised to do it, but when it came down to the moment of truth, they wouldn't allow it.
So it's a traditional policy for the government to audit books.
Not only traditional, but required by their contracts.
Please join me in welcoming Ross Perot.
Naughton says auditors were finally allowed to peek at the finances of a Perot subsidiary, EDS Federal, but not the parent company where Medicare profits were concealed.
They had full access. They had full access to
Why would
anything
Mr. Naughton and others say at this point that they were only given limited access and this was to EDS Federal?
I don't have any idea. Nobody ever asked for a penny back. Nobody ever came pounding on my desk and said, you let us look over here, but we need to look over here.
The congressional investigation, in fact, just faded away. Apparently because by this time Ross Perot had friends in high places.
High officials in the Nixon White House maintain in their records and personally that he was very much an insider with many contacts, that they did intervene for him in IRS matters and in Social Security matters.
Internal memoranda and other documents from the Nixon administration confirm the White House tried to help Perot, describing the Texan as mad as hell about cutbacks in his Medicare business. These documents also show the Nixon White House expedited payments of $400,000 withheld because of EDS's alleged excessive profits. But the Nixon records also show White House concern about that congressional investigation of Perot's contracts and what is described as an ordinate flack should the administration intervene on Perot's behalf. For Perot today, past White House influence and the Medicare contracts are touchy issues that contradict the image he has tried to create with voters.
See, the thing I love about this campaign process, facts don't matter. Stories matter.
The story is, based on many facts, Ross Perot is a hard-nosed businessman who made a lot of money from lucrative Medicare and Medicaid contracts. Nothing in our investigation suggests illegal activity by Perot or EDS, which he sold in 1984. But certainly the government bureaucracy he has been so quick to criticize has been very, very good to Ross Perot. I'm John Camp, CNN Special Assignment.
Up next on Inside Politics 92, another congressman is checkmated by the voters.
Panasonic presents a new breed of smooth operator. The new Smooth Operator rechargeable razor unites the old-fashioned closeness of a warm, wet shave with the convenience and no-nick comfort of an electric. Don't try this with any plugged-in razor. Smooth Operator wet-dry razors from Panasonic. Smoother than you ever thought you'd be.
I swim, I jog. I love junk food. Sometimes even I get constipation.
Now, X-Lax pills give you 3 choices: regular, extra gentle, or new maximum relief. X-Lax for regular people who sometimes aren't.
Fixodent Fresh. The spring water fresh feeling is reason enough to try it. And it's the strongest holding adhesive, so you'll never settle for anything less. Crisp freshness. Strongest hold. 2 great reasons to Fixodent and forget it.
Just imagine how you'll enhance the beauty and value of your home when you add an attractive and functional new living space from 4 Seasons. And now, owning a 4-season sunroom or solarium is more affordable than ever. You can enjoy the comfort and ease of outdoor living indoors, starting at just $2,990 plus installation. There's a 4-season sunroom to fit every house, every purpose, and every budget. These high-quality, maintenance-free units can often be installed right on your existing patio or deck. And right now, all four-season sunrooms, solariums, and patio rooms are on sale at easily affordable prices. So call this number now to schedule a free in-home survey with no obligation, or simply request a copy of our latest brochure. When it comes to quality, trust your home to Four Seasons and enjoy the finest in outdoor living indoors.
We were having fun until Thomas put in our new money management program.
Select your investments.
All these investment categories popped up.
Stocks, bonds, T-bills.
That's easy. We only have one.
Why?
That's when I wondered, does everyone have all these?
Common sense says any investment plan should be diversified, and Fidelity Investments, America's largest mutual fund company, can make it easy.
Last night, it really hit us.
This place sounds like Wall Street tonight.
We can barely keep up with our work, let alone our investments. That's when I decided I'm going to find something that can do it all.
I'm going to do some research.
You can make just one investment in Fidelity Asset Manager, a mutual fund that gradually adjusts its portfolio for changing markets with no sales charge. It can be great for an IRA, too. So call Fidelity now for a free fact kit on how to diversify in one easy step with Fidelity Asset Manager. Call 1-800-356-8100. Fidelity Investments. Common sense. Uncommon results.
No matter what our beliefs or where we come from, chances are if we fly, we do it on an airplane made by Boeing.
You want to lease a Mercedes, but you don't want a long commitment. You could get a shorter term, but the payments might be too high. Introducing the win-win lease. Short term, less cost. It's like stumbling onto a bargain signed by Van Gogh. The Mercedes win-win lease.
Arkansas voters have heeded the call to bounce Burl. Seven-term Congressman Burl Anthony was defeated in yesterday's Democratic primary runoff. He's the second Arkansas congressman to fall amid flack over his overdrafts at the House Bank, following in the footsteps of Democrat Bill Alexander. The man who beat Anthony, Secretary of State Bill McEwen, played up his opponent's check-writing woes. McEwen faces Republican businessman Jay Dickey in November. Figuring in the runoff results from Arkansas, 12 House members have gotten the heave-ho in primaries this year.
Tomorrow on Inside Politics 92, we'll hear from some members of CNN's Capital Gang. On the agenda, Dan Quayle's comments on cultural elites. That's all for this edition of Inside Politics 92. I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington.
I'm Catherine Crier in Atlanta. Thanks for watching. Now, Cheryl Atkinson has a preview of what's next on CNN. Cheryl?
Catherine, coming up in just a couple of minutes, lawmakers debate a proposed constitutional amendment to balance the federal budget. One House member calls it the balanced budget follies. Also, some hospitals are better than others. A new report offers help in separating the good from the bad. And the mysterious Nazi defector Rudolf Hess. Newly released documents provide a new footnote to World War II history. Join me for those stories and more on Early Prime in just a couple of minutes on CNN.
Coming up, Early Prime continues, followed by Showbiz Today, after a word from your local cable systems, next on CNN.
I heard you guys got a great deal on the 93 Ford Escort.
Not a deal, a whole new way of buying. 4 Escorts, one price, $10,499.
Not so fast. I want power steering, rear defrost, and a good stereo.
Still one price.
All right, I want air conditioning. And what if I want a hatchback or a sedan?
$10,499.
Right now, you can get any one of 4 new 93 Escorts, all well-equipped for only $10,499. No gimmicks, no hidden costs. See your Ford dealer today.
How about a wagon?
$10,499.
Just checking.
What makes Iowa Realty's Home Show 92 such a crowd pleaser? The Home Builders. 12 of Des Moines' finest craftsmen showcasing their work in a dozen luxurious homes. The interior designers, artistry and innovation from contemporary to classic. The exhibits, home improvement products with on-site demonstrations and information. But perhaps the best reason of all is that Home Show 92 benefits the Variety Club of Iowa. So don't miss it, June 20th through the 28th at Country Club in Clark.